see this torque screw. This secures the rotor in place so that it doesn't turn and shear the studs off. So what you need to get rid of this is your T40 adapter for your ratchet. In this case I need a little more force. So the trick I'm going to use is to put two lugs on the two studs here, put a wrench between it to keep the rotor and wheel from spinning while I apply pressure to the screw. Okay, so now I've got this in place. I'm using a breaker bar or a really long extension with lugs on the studs to apply pressure this way so that when I push down on my ratchet it's not going to spin the wheel. So let's try this. You need to be really careful to hold it up so it doesn't push down and strip the bolt while you're at it. Okay. And when it does turn, it'll feel like it's going to strip, but it's not. After you get the first little bit done, it's really easy to take it out. Before we start bleeding the brake lines, we're going to take the cap off of our brake fluid reservoir. This will allow the fluid to move freely without creating a vacuum. We want to make sure that nothing gets in there. So I'm just going to put this over it and leave the cap sit here. So the tools you're going to need for this portion, for draining the brake lines, is a size 11 brake wrench and something that's called a one-man brake bleeder. What it is a small vacuum pump, can't even see the dial, and a fluid reservoir with two lines. One end's open. What we're going to do is put the brake line wrench over this tube, fit it onto the nipple, and slide our brake line wrench onto the bolt portion. Now we're going to loosen the bolt like that. That should be loose enough that I can turn it by hand now. Yep, it is. So that's how you do that. This will be sure to release any pressure that's holding the caliper and pressing the brake pads against the rotor. There are two bolts that secure the caliper in place. There's one up here on the top, and there's one more straight down from that. They're size 15 metric. I use a ratchet and a socket to get at them. You might run into some trouble with this mounting bracket for the emergency brake line if you have a socket that's too deep or a ratchet that's too large. Now that I've successfully removed the two bolts securing the caliper, it'll move freely on the rotor. Only problem is, it won't come off the rotor, either because it's worn grooves here, or just because the caliper won't release. So what you have to do is, once again, secure the rotor, keep it from turning, two lugs and some metal bar, and use a pry bar like this one. Wedge it between the rotor and some supporting structure on the caliper. Be sure you balance both sides evenly, otherwise you risk getting it jammed on there in such a way you'll never get it off. Alright, so I'm going to start prying. So I've been alternating directions, prying from this side here, and the other side down here, whichever way. Just remember to hold it in place with this bar and two lugs. That'll keep your rotor from spinning. So I'm at the last step here, and it should come right out, like that. We've attempted on multiple calipers to retract the piston using this tool, a ratchet, and some pressure. We've never successfully pushed the piston back into its cylinder. So we ended up buying new calipers. But there is another tool, unlike this one, that comes with a metal plate here to allow you to apply pressure without actually using your arm or anything. So it's kind of automated. But that tool is $80, whereas this one was $20. An excellent thing to do while you have the rotor off is to paint the contacting surface on the wheel with an anti-seize lubricant of some kind. It'll usually be silver or copper in color. You just apply it right here in this channel, which is really close to the lugs all the way around. This will keep the rotor from rusting to the wheel hub here. what you need to do to get your rotor back in position, slide it over these studs. Make sure you don't put them in these little beveled holes. And then put your lugs back on, 3 of them or so. So you can apply pressure here once again. So then you can tighten this retaining screw or whatever it's called. And you turn it this way. And that will just keep the rotor from falling off. Remove these old clips that hold the brake pads in place and replace them one at a time. There's the first one. Just grab this. You can see it has this piece that holds here. Put it in and just press down and it should pop into place. One thing you want to be very careful of is that you get these on in the right order. Since the rotor passes through right here and you have your brake pads moving in either direction, you want to be sure that one of these little tabs here aren't sticking into the space where the rotor travels. So they'll always be facing out. So for example with this one, it'll look something like this. Tab on the outside, and then on this side here, this is one of the old ones, but it also has the tab on the outside if you can see it. We're applying some brake silencer to the back of these pads. It takes about 10 minutes to dry, and it'll keep them from squeaking or making any high-pitched noises when you're braking. Now we're going to install this brake pad. This one, in particular, from this brand is marked inner. So you take this brake, turn it with the tabs down. So you very carefully lower the brake pad through here towards those little clips that we installed earlier. And you get it under one edge, and you try and get the edge of the tab and lift it. And that'll allow the brake to fit into that tab, like so. And I'll show you on this side too. You can reach from the back, grab it and lift it up, and it'll fit right in like that. This one you can push all the way back against the piston, like that. Now this whole assembly can move to make the installation easier. So I'm going to grab my other brake pad. This one's marked outer, you can't see it. Another thing, if your hands are full of grease, you want to be really careful about touching this surface, because it'll make it wear in an uneven manner. So same thing, metal tabs down, carefully lower it into this space, if I can get it to fit, like so. Lift the tabs, push one side in and then the other. And that should be it. Now this whole assembly can move back and forth. You can squeeze your rotor in there once we get it on the wheel. So very carefully fit your caliper and assembly over the rotor and put the 2 bolts that hold it in place back in. And just turn these until you can't turn them anymore. And if you want to get technical, you can grab a torque wrench and torque it to 81 pounds. Put your hose for your brake bleeder over the nipple for the bleeder and loosen the bolt. And when you loosen it, no fluid will probably come out. So you can either have a friend go and press the pedal or apply a vacuum on your brake bleeder, like I just did, and then go press the brake yourself. You have to be careful since this does lose vacuum over time. And once you're done, you tighten the bleeder when you don't see any air bubbles traveling out right outside the nozzle here. Now that we've successfully bled the braking system, we want to check our fluid reservoir up here. As you can see, there's a minimum level and a maximum level. What we're going to do is take some of our .4 brake fluid and add it to the reservoir until it reaches the max line. You probably want a real bright light, otherwise it's kind of hard to read it. So right about there is the max line on this vehicle. Now I'm going to reapply my cap and remove anything I left under the hood.